The delivery room reeked of blood and disinfectant. Stella's screams tore through the sterile air as another contraction ripped through her body. The fetal monitor beeped frantically. The baby's heartbeat was dropping. "We need to operate now," the doctor shouted, eyes fixed on the monitor. "Where is her husband? We need consent." Francis stood in the corner, his expensive cologne clashing with the hospital's smell. In his hand, divorce papers. In his eyes, cold calculation. "Stella," he whispered, leaning close to her sweat-drenched face. "Sign these divorce papers first." "Francis. Please. The baby." Stella gasped, her vision blurring with pain and tears. "Sign it, or I don't sign your surgical consent." His voice was ice. The monitor's beeping turned erratic. A nurse grabbed Francis's arm. "Sir, she could die. The baby could die." He didn't flinch. "Then she knows what to do." Stella's trembling hand reached for the pen. Blood stained the papers as she scrawled her signature, each letter a piece of her soul dying. Francis smiled, signed the surgical consent and walked out. The last thing Stella heard before the anesthesia took her was her baby's weakening heartbeat and her own breaking heart. Before we continue, let me ask you something quietly. Where are you listening from right now? And what time is it in your part of the world? Some of us are hearing this story under the hot afternoon sun. Some in the calm of the night, when thoughts are heavy and hearts are open. Different places, one story, one lesson. If stories like this speak to your heart, please subscribe to the channel. Your like helps this story reach another soul. Your comment tells me you understand the lesson. And when you share, you may be saving someone from the same mistake. Now let us continue. 3 years earlier, Stella had believed in fairy tales. The wedding had been modest but beautiful, white roses, a small church in Lekki, and Francis looking at her like she was the only woman in the world. Stella, orphaned at 15 and raised by her late grandmother in a quiet part of Ibadan, had never imagined she'd marry someone like Francis Martins. He was charming, educated, a rising bank manager at one of Lagos's prestigious investment firms. His mother, Mrs. Martins, wore designer clothes and spoke with the clipped accent of old money. "You're lucky my son chose you," Mrs. Martins had said during their first meeting, her smile not reaching her eyes. He could have had anyone. Girls from proper families were lining up. Stella had smiled politely, ignoring the sting. She worked as a finance officer at a mid-sized firm, kept her life simple, her past private. What mattered was that Francis loved her. Or so she thought. The first year was sweet. Francis brought her flowers, called her during lunch breaks, held her hand during evening walks along Bar Beach. But slowly, subtly, things changed. "Who were you talking to?" he'd ask, picking up her phone without permission. "Why did you come home at 6:15 when you finish work at 6 o'clock? That dress is too tight. People will think you're looking for attention." Stella adjusted. She dressed more conservatively, reported her whereabouts, limited her friendships. She told herself this was normal. He loved her, he was just protective. Mrs. Martins's visits became more frequent. She'd arrive unannounced, running her finger along shelves to check for dust, tasting Stella's cooking with a disapproving frown. "Francis is used to better seasoning," she'd say, pushing her plate away. "But I suppose you're doing your best with what you know." The sharpest cuts came with the pregnancy questions. 2 years married and still no child? Mrs. Martins would announce at family gatherings, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Is something wrong with you, Stella? Have you seen a doctor?" Stella endured it all silently, praying for the day she'd have good news to share. That day came in the 3rd year of marriage. The pregnancy test showed 2 pink lines. Stella cried with joy, imagining Francis's face when she told him. She prepared his favorite meal, jollof rice with fried plantains, and waited. Francis came home late, distracted. He barely looked at the food. "I'm pregnant," Stella said, her voice trembling with excitement. He looked up from his phone. "What?" "We're having a baby, Francis." The reaction she'd imagined, joy, surprise, a hug, never came. Instead, he nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. "Okay," he said. "That's okay." Then he returned to his phone, fingers typing rapidly. The screen's glow reflected in his eyes, but Stella couldn't see what held his attention so completely. That night, lying beside her husband in the dark, Stella felt the first cold whisper of fear. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. Once, twice, 3 times. Francis reached for it immediately, turning away from her to read the messages. In the darkness, Stella placed her hand on her still flat belly and wondered what kind of home she was bringing a child into. Pregnancy should have brought them closer. Instead, it built walls. By the 4th month, Francis was a stranger who happened to sleep in the same bed. He came home later and later, his shirt smelling of perfume that wasn't Stella's. When she tried to show him the ultrasound photos, their baby's tiny hands, the curve of its spine, he glanced for 2 seconds before returning to his laptop. Francis, don't you want to know if it's a boy or a girl? Does it matter? I have work to do. Mrs. Martins's visits intensified. She'd walk through the house with a critical eye, making comments that felt like small cuts. You're getting fat everywhere, not just your stomach. Francis likes his women to maintain themselves, you know. Are you sure the baby is healthy? With your family history. Oh wait, you don't really have family history, do you? No one to ask about genetic problems. My son seems stressed lately. Pregnancy can be hard on husbands too, Stella. Make sure you're not neglecting his needs. Stella tried to be understanding. She cooked his favorite meals even when the smell made her nauseous. She stayed up waiting for him, even when exhaustion pulled at her bones. She ignored the perfume, the late nights, the way he flinched when she touched him. Until the 6th month when she couldn't ignore it anymore. Francis had left his laptop open. Stella wasn't snooping. She'd only wanted to add their doctor's appointment to their shared calendar. But the message notification popped up on the screen. Vivian. Can't wait to see you tonight. Wear that cologne I like, Red Heart. Stella's hands trembled as she clicked the message thread. Months of conversations unfolded before her eyes. Intimate messages. Plans. Promises. Photos of Francis with a woman Stella had never seen. Beautiful, polished, laughing at something Francis said. The baby kicked. Stella barely felt it. When Francis came home that night, she was waiting with his laptop open. Who is Vivian? Francis didn't even have the decency to look guilty. Stella, don't start. Don't start? Don't start. Her voice cracked. You're having an affair. It's not, look, you're hormonal. Pregnancy is making you paranoid. I saw the messages, Francis. I saw the photos. He sighed like she was being unreasonable. Fine. Yes, I've been seeing Vivian. We work together. She understands me in ways you never could. The words hit like physical blows. We're married. We're having a baby. A baby I never really wanted, Francis said, and Stella felt her world tilt. You think I don't know you stopped taking your pills on purpose? You trapped me, Stella. That's not, I didn't. My mother warned me about girls like you. No family, no background, desperate to climb up by latching onto someone better. Stella couldn't breathe. Someone better? I loved you. I gave up everything for you. Francis's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, Vivian's name flashing on the screen, and something in his face softened in a way it never did for Stella anymore. Vivian comes from the Adeyemi family. Real wealth. Real connections. She went to Oxford. She speaks 3 languages. She's... Stop. Stella's voice was barely a whisper. Just stop. But he didn't. She's who I should have married. Who I would have married if my mother hadn't pushed me to settle down with someone simple first. The next day, Stella followed Francis to his office. She told herself she needed closure, needed to see this Vivian with her own eyes. She saw her. Vivian was everything Francis had said. Elegant, confident, wearing a designer suit that probably cost more than Stella's monthly salary. She stood close to Francis outside the bank, her hand on his arm, laughing at something he said. Francis saw Stella watching. Their eyes met across the parking lot. He didn't look ashamed. He looked annoyed. That evening, Mrs. Martins came to the house with Francis. They sat Stella down like she was a child being scolded. I know about Vivian, Mrs. Martins said calmly. I've known for months. In fact, I introduced them. Stella's blood ran cold. You knew. Vivian's father and I do business together. She's perfect for Francis, the kind of wife he deserves. You, Stella, were a mistake. A phase. Mrs. Martins leaned forward. Be reasonable. Take a settlement. Leave quietly. The baby will be fine. We'll make sure it's provided for. The baby. Stella's hand instinctively covered her swollen belly. This is Francis's child. Which is why we're being generous, Mrs. Martins continued. But Francis's future is with Vivian. His real future. You need to accept that. Francis said nothing. He sat there, letting his mother speak for him, his eyes on his phone. I'm not signing anything, Stella said, standing despite the dizziness. I'm your wife, Francis. This is your child. You made vows. Francis finally looked up. Vows to a woman I never really loved. I want a divorce, Stella. Before this baby comes. I won't raise a child in a loveless marriage. Then learn to love me again. Stella was crying now, hating herself for begging. We can fix this. For the baby. Please, Francis. The papers will be ready next week, he said, standing. Sign them, or I'll make this very difficult for you. He left with his mother. Stella stood alone in the house she tried so hard to make a home, feeling her baby move inside her, and wondered how love could turn so completely into cruelty. The divorce papers arrived 3 days later. Stella threw them away. She didn't know that Francis was patient, that he was waiting, that he would choose the worst possible moment to get what he wanted. The pain started on a Tuesday afternoon. Stella was alone, folding tiny baby clothes she'd bought during happier days. Francis had moved out the week before, taking his belongings to what he called temporary accommodation, which Stella knew meant Vivian's luxury apartment in Ikoyi. The first contraction felt like a hand squeezing her insides. She gasped, dropping the small yellow onesie. Too early. She was only 36 weeks. The baby wasn't due for another month. Not yet, she whispered to her belly. Please, not yet. The second contraction came 5 minutes later, stronger. Then another. And another. Stella fumbled for her phone, dialing Francis. It rang and rang. Voicemail. She called again. And again. Voicemail. 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 Pain tore through her, stealing her breath. She could feel wetness between her legs, blood, too much blood. Her neighbor, Mrs. Adebayo, heard her screams. The elderly woman broke through the door and found Stella collapsed on the floor, bleeding, clutching her stomach. Jesus Christ. We need to get you to hospital. The drive to Lagos General Hospital was a blur of pain and fear. Each bump in the road sent agony shooting through Stella's body. She could feel something was wrong, terribly, horribly wrong. At the hospital, doctors swarmed. Words floated above her like birds she couldn't catch. Placental abruption. Fetal distress. Emergency C-section. We need to operate immediately, Dr. Okafor said, his face grave. Both mother and baby are in critical danger. Where is your husband? We need his consent signature. I've been calling him, Stella gasped between contractions. He won't answer. The nurse tried Francis's number. It rang 3 times before he picked up. Yes. His voice was casual, annoyed at the interruption. Mr. Martins, your wife is in critical condition. We need you at Lagos General immediately. We need consent for emergency surgery. A pause. I'm in the middle of something. Can this wait? Sir, your wife and baby could die. Another pause, longer. I'll be there when I can. He hung up. 45 minutes later, while Stella screamed in agony and her baby's heartbeat dropped lower and lower on the monitor, Francis finally arrived. He wasn't alone. Mrs. Martins walked beside him, her face set in cold determination, and Francis carried a brown envelope. Thank God. Dr. Okafor rushed toward him. We need your signature immediately. Your wife needs surgery now, or I need a moment alone with my wife first, Francis said calmly. Sir, there's no time. Just 5 minutes. Dr. Okafor hesitated, then nodded. 5 minutes. Not 1 second more. The medical staff stepped out. Mrs. Martins positioned herself by the door, and Francis walked to Stella's bedside. She looked up at him through tears of pain and relief. Francis, thank God you're here. Please, they need to. He dropped the brown envelope on her chest. Divorce papers, he said quietly. Sign them. Stella's mind couldn't process his words. Another contraction hit and she screamed. Francis. What? Please. You've refused to sign for weeks. You've made this difficult. But I'm not raising a child in a marriage I don't want. He pulled out a pen. Sign the papers, Stella. Our baby is dying, she sobbed. Help me. Please. I will. As soon as you sign. The monitor's beeping became erratic. A nurse burst in. Mr. Martins, we need that consent now. Francis held up the surgical consent form the hospital had prepared. I'll sign this as soon as my wife signs these. He tapped the divorce papers. Dr. Okafor's face went white. Sir, you can't be serious. Your wife could die. Your child could die. Then she knows what to do. Mrs. Martin spoke from the doorway, her voice like steel wrapped in velvet. Stop being dramatic, Stella. Sign the papers. Save the baby. Move on with your life. This is for the best. Stella couldn't breathe past the pain. Her baby was dying inside her. She could feel it. Every slowing heartbeat on the monitor was a countdown to loss. Francis, she whispered, her voice breaking. I loved you. I love you. Please don't do this. Not like this. Sign, or watch our baby die because of your stubbornness. The room spun. Blood soaked through the sheets beneath her. The monitor's beeping slowed further. A baby's heart giving up. With shaking, blood-stained hands, Stella reached for the pen. She couldn't see through her tears. Each letter of her name was a piece of her soul torn away. The signature that ended her marriage was written in the same moments her body was trying to give life to her child. Francis snatched the papers before the ink dried. He scanned them quickly, smiled, then signed the surgical consent form. All yours, doctor, he said, handing over the form. As the medical team rushed in and began prepping Stella for emergency transport to the OR, Francis walked toward the door. Francis, Stella called out weakly. Stay. Please. What if I don't? He didn't turn around. Vivian is waiting for me. We have dinner reservations. Mrs. Martins patted her son's shoulder proudly. You made the right choice, darling. They walked out together, leaving Stella being wheeled toward surgery alone. The last thing Stella remembered before the anesthesia took her was the sound of her baby's heartbeat, weak, fighting, fading, and the image of Francis's back as he walked away. Then darkness. Stella woke to whiteness and pain. The hospital room was too bright. Every part of her body screamed in agony. She tried to sit up and couldn't. Easy, easy. A nurse's face appeared above her. You've been through major trauma. The surgery took 3 hours. My baby, Stella's voice was a croak. My baby. She's alive. A little girl. She's in the NICU, but she's fighting. She's a fighter like her mother. A girl. A daughter. Stella's tears came hot and fast. Can I see her? Soon. You lost a dangerous amount of blood. We almost lost you twice on the table. You need to rest. Days blurred together. Stella learned to walk again, to manage the pain, to pump breast milk for a daughter she'd only seen through NICU glass. The baby was tiny but stable, hooked to monitors but breathing on her own. Francis never came. Not once. Mrs. Martins visited only to deliver a message. Francis had filed the divorce officially. The papers Stella signed were legally binding. He wanted nothing to do with her or the baby. Child support would be discussed through lawyers. You brought this on yourself, Mrs. Martin said coldly. You should have known your place. On the 8th day, Patricia arrived. Patricia had worked with Stella years ago, before Stella's marriage. They'd lost touch, but Patricia had somehow heard about what happened through the Lagos professional network gossip mill. She walked into Stella's room, took one look at her friend's hollow eyes and gaunt face, and started crying. Stella! Oh my God, Stella! What did they do to you? Stella told her everything. Every humiliating detail. The affair. The ultimatum. The divorce papers signed in blood and tears while her baby was dying. Patricia's face shifted from sympathy to fury. That bastard. That absolute bastard. She grabbed Stella's hand. Stella, why didn't you tell him who you really are? Why didn't you? Tell him what? Stella asked weakly. Patricia stared at her. You really never told him, did you? About the company. About your grandmother's inheritance. About what you own. Stella looked away. I wanted him to love me for me. Not for money. Not for connections. Just me. And look where that got you. Patricia stood, pacing. Stella, do you even know where Francis works? Genesis Investment Firm. He's a senior manager there. Patricia laughed bitterly. He's a senior manager at a company you own 60% of. The words didn't make sense at first. Stella's pain medication made everything fuzzy. What? Your grandmother's inheritance. You invested it through shell companies and trusts, remember? To keep it private. Genesis Investment Firm is one of your primary holdings. You're the anonymous majority shareholder. Francis's salary, his position, his whole career. It exists because of your money. The room tilted. Stella gripped the bed rails. No, that can't. I never looked at the details. I just let the trustees handle. I'm looking at the corporate records right now. Patricia held up her tablet. Stella Okonkwo Martins, trustee of the Okonkwo Legacy Trust, majority shareholder. That's you. Francis has been working for you this entire time and didn't know it. Stella started laughing, then crying, then couldn't tell the difference. All those years of hiding her wealth, wanting to be loved for herself, and she'd built the very cage her husband stood in. She'd paid his salary while he betrayed her. She'd funded his lifestyle while he called her worthless. Patricia, Stella whispered. What do I do? Patricia's eyes were hard. You make him pay. Not with revenge, with truth. You show him exactly what he threw away. 2 days later, Patricia made the calls. She contacted the board of Genesis Investment Firm, requesting an emergency meeting with senior management. The principal shareholder, who had remained anonymous for years, was requesting FaceTime with key personnel. Francis received the summons that afternoon. A meeting with the mysterious primary investor. This could be his big break, the promotion he'd been chasing. Vivian's father had promised to put in a good word. He wore his best suit, practiced his smile in the mirror. He had no idea that the woman he destroyed was about to walk back into his life. Not as his victim, as his boss. The Genesis Investment Firm boardroom occupied the entire top floor of their Victoria Island headquarters. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Lagos's chaotic beauty. The blend of poverty and wealth, struggle and success that defined the city. Francis adjusted his tie for the third time. Vivian had helped him pick it out that morning, kissing him for luck. This could change everything for us, she'd whispered. He believed it. Around the conference table sat the firm's senior management, all looking nervous. The mysterious majority shareholder had never requested a meeting before. For 6 years, the Okonkwo Legacy Trust had been a silent partner, providing capital, taking dividends, asking nothing. Until today. Any idea what this is about? Francis whispered to his colleague. No clue. Just got the email yesterday. Apparently, the principal wants to review key personnel. The door opened. Patricia walked in first, her face professionally neutral. Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you for attending on short notice. She moved to the presentation screen. The principal shareholder has some concerns about company direction and wishes to address them personally. Please welcome the trustee and representative of the Okonkwo Legacy Trust. The screen flickered to life. Stella's face appeared, broadcast from her hospital room. Francis's blood turned to ice. Hello, everyone, Stella said, her voice calm despite the hospital gown, despite the paleness of her face, despite everything. Thank you for making time for me. The room erupted in confused whispers. Francis couldn't move, couldn't breathe. For those who don't know me, my name is Stella Okonkwo Martins. I am the granddaughter of Chief Mrs. Elizabeth Okonkwo, whose estate I inherited 7 years ago. Upon her death, I used that inheritance to invest in several Lagos-based businesses, including this one. I currently hold a 60% stake in Genesis Investment Firm. The executive's faces shifted from confusion to shock. Francis felt his world tilting off its axis. I kept my involvement private for personal reasons, Stella continued, her eyes finding Francis on the screen. I wanted to see how businesses operated without owner interference. I wanted to see people's true nature without the complications of wealth or power. She paused and something painful crossed her face. I learned what I needed to learn. Patricia stepped forward, distributing folders. Inside, you'll find documentation of Mrs. Martins's ownership, verified by our legal team and auditors. You'll also find several items of concern she wishes to address. Francis opened his folder with shaking hands. Corporate documents, stock certificates, bank transfers, all bearing Stella's name, her grandmother's trust, the investments that had built Genesis from a struggling startup into a powerhouse, the company he worked for, the salary he earned, the promotions he'd celebrated. All of it built on Stella's money, the woman he'd called worthless. I have several concerns to address, Stella said, her voice stronger now. First, regarding my marriage. She held up papers to the camera. The divorce documents. Blood-stained and tear-stained. 2 weeks ago, while I was in premature labor and suffering a placental abruption that threatened both my life and my daughter's life, my husband, Francis Martins, senior manager at this firm, refused to sign surgical consent forms unless I first signed divorce papers. Gasps around the table. All eyes turned to Francis. He wanted to disappear, to deny it, to run. I signed these papers under extreme duress, while bleeding and in fear for my child's life. I have witness statements from hospital staff, security footage, and medical records documenting this coercion. Patricia clicked to the next slide. Hospital records appeared, time-stamped and detailed. Dr. Okafor's incident report. Nurse testimony. Even security footage showing Francis and Mrs. Martins leaving the hospital while Stella was wheeled to emergency surgery. My lawyers have informed me that this divorce is legally invalid due to the coercion involved, Stella said. However, I no longer wish to be married to Francis Martins. I am pursuing a legitimate divorce through proper channels. Francis found his voice. Stella, I can explain. Please don't interrupt. Her voice could have cut glass. I'm not finished. She looked directly at the camera, directly at him, and Francis saw something in her eyes he'd never seen before. Not the quiet girl he'd married. Not the broken woman he'd left bleeding. Something else entirely. Strength. Second, I wish to address a serious ethics violation. Mr. Martins has been conducting an affair with a colleague, Vivian Adeyemi, for approximately 8 months. This relationship began while he was married and while both were employed at this firm. Such conduct violates our ethics and conduct policies. Another slide. Screenshots of Francis and Vivian's messages. Photos of them together. All meticulously documented. Third, Mr. Martins used company resources and time for personal matters, including conducting his affair and harassing his pregnant wife during work hours. Phone records show 37 calls made to my number during business hours over 3 months, most to pressure me regarding divorce proceedings. Francis felt the room's atmosphere shift. His colleagues' faces showed shock, disgust, disappointment. His career was evaporating before his eyes. Finally, Stella said, and now her voice wavered slightly, I wish to address the way Mr. Martin spoke about this company and his position. He frequently told me, and others, that he deserved better than his current role, that his success was due to his own merit, that he was being held back by people who didn't recognize his worth. She smiled, sad and bitter. Mr. Martins, every promotion you received was approved by me. Every salary increase came from my investment capital. Every success you celebrated was built on the foundation my grandmother's legacy provided. You didn't earn your way up. You were lifted by the woman you called worthless. The silence in the room was suffocating. Effective immediately, Francis Martins is terminated from Genesis Investment Firm. For cause: ethics violations, workplace misconduct, and behavior unbefitting of our company values. He will receive no severance, no references, and no future opportunities within any company in my investment portfolio. Patricia handed Francis a termination letter. His hand shook so badly he almost dropped it. Furthermore, Stella continued, I am announcing a full ethics review of all senior management. Anyone found to have knowledge of Mr. Martins's conduct and failed to report it will face disciplinary action. Francis stood on legs that felt like water. Stella, please. I'm sorry. I didn't know. I never knew you were. You never bothered to know me at all, she said quietly. You married me when you thought I was nobody. You betrayed me when someone better came along. You tortured me when I was most vulnerable. And you would have let me die rather than show me basic human decency. Tears streamed down her face now, but her voice remained steady. The person I love died the day you handed me divorce papers while our daughter was dying inside me. I will never forgive you, Francis. And I will never let you forget what you destroyed. The screen went dark. Francis stood there, termination letter in hand, career in ruins, staring at the blank screen where his wife's face had been. Patricia gestured to the door. Security will escort you out, Mr. Martins. You have 30 minutes to clear your desk. The news spread through Lagos's professional circles like wildfire. Within 48 hours everyone knew. Francis Martins, the charming manager, was actually the unemployed ex-husband who'd abused his secret heiress wife. The story had everything: betrayal, hidden wealth, a hospital room confrontation. Vivian called him once after the news broke. Francis, I can't be associated with this. My father's business, our reputation. I'm sorry. She hung up before he could respond. Mrs. Martins tried to control the damage, calling in favors, spinning stories. But Stella's wealth and the documented evidence made it impossible. Besides, Lagos society loved nothing more than watching the mighty fall. Mrs. Martin showed up at Stella's home 3 weeks after the boardroom meeting. Stella, holding baby Hope, answered the door through the intercom. Please, Stella. He's my son. He made mistakes, but he made choices, Stella said. So did you. You encouraged him. You approved of Vivian. You stood in that hospital room and told me to sign those papers while your grandchild was dying. I want to see the baby. My granddaughter. Stella looked down at Hope, sleeping peacefully in her arms. The baby had her eyes, Francis's nose. A perfect blend of two people who would never be together. No, Stella said simply. You chose Francis over this child before she was even born. Live with that choice. She disconnected the intercom. Francis tried everything. Phone calls that went to voicemail. Emails that bounced back. Lawyers who told him he had no case. Abandoning a wife in medical crisis. Coercing divorce under duress. Documented ethics violations. He destroyed any leverage he might have had. He tried to see Hope at the hospital. Security escorted him out. He tried to show up at Stella's house. Her new security team, courtesy of her actual wealth, turned him away. 3 months after the boardroom meeting, Francis sat in a budget hotel room in Festac. All his savings were gone, spent on lawyers who couldn't help him, trying to maintain appearances he could no longer afford. No firm in Lagos would hire him. The scandal had spread too far. His phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. It was a photo of Stella, looking healthy and radiant, holding Hope. The baby was bigger now, smiling. Behind them, a beautiful home. Stella's real home, the one she'd never shown Francis. Below the photo, 4 words. Some choices are permanent. Francis stared at the photo for hours. At the woman he'd called worthless. At the child he'd used as leverage. At the life he'd thrown away because he thought he deserved better. He'd wanted better. Now he had nothing. 1 year later, Stella stood in her private office overlooking Lagos. Hope played on a mat nearby, babbling happily at her toys. On Stella's desk sat a photo. Her grandmother, young and proud, standing in front of the first business she'd built. You taught me to be strong, Stella whispered to the photo. I forgot for a while. But I remembered. Her phone showed 63 missed calls from Francis over the past year. 63 attempts at apology, explanation, reconciliation. She'd listened to none of them. Patricia walked in with coffee. How are you feeling? Tired? Heartbroken? Stronger? Stella smiled at Hope. But okay. We're okay. Francis called my office again. He's asking if there's any way. No, Stella said firmly. There isn't. She picked up Hope, holding her daughter close. The baby grabbed her mother's necklace, the one Stella's grandmother had given her, inscribed with words Stella finally understood. Your worth is not determined by those who cannot see it. Francis had looked at her and seen nothing worth keeping. But he'd been wrong. And in destroying her, he'd destroyed himself. Some consequences cannot be escaped. Some choices once made cannot be unsigned. Stella had learned that lesson in blood and tears. Now Francis would learn it for the rest of his life. Thank you for staying with me to the end. Comment your thoughts on the betrayal, and tell me where you are watching from. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more gripping stories like this. What do you think happens next? Comment below.